What is up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Welcome back. I'm Timmy Foody. You can follow me on Instagram at Timmy_Foody or go over to www.timmyfoody.com. Today we're going to be doing my chicken and sweet corn soup. Now, I did say the other day that I was going to be doing this like a risotto thing with this stock that we made the other day, but what I want to do is, I don't know, I had the thought while I was making, maybe I was making the stock, maybe I should try this chicken and sweet corn soup because I've not done it in ages. So that's what we're going to do, because it's been a while since I've made it and I really enjoy it. And then I had a really cool idea to actually do one of my 63-degree eggs on top, because when you make the soup, quite often you'll get some whisked up egg and like skim it through the soup. Which is quite a traditional kind of Chinese thing to do, to have this kind of egg skimmed through the soup, like these strands of egg. But what I thought was actually doing that with a 63-degree egg would be kind of cool. So we're going to give that a go. So I've got an egg in the pan with just with my sous vide thing, this Nova gadget that I've got. So that's in there at 63 degrees. I've popped the egg in and it's going to be in there for about 45 minutes. So that's on now. We'll start the soup off because we've already got the stock. This shouldn't take too long. I'll probably leave it simmering for a while when we get to that point. But what we're going to do first is take you through what we need. So we need a frying pan to cook off a few bits and bobs, which we'll get to. Then we need a main pan, which we're going to actually put the soup in. So I'm just using my cast iron pan. And then I'll actually have that on the hob over there, so that can just be sort of simmering away while we cook this main thing. There's something I do quite often is have a main pan which we're cooking whatever the thing in, and then I'll have a separate pan which I'll be frying off the individual ingredients. So I think that's probably the way to go with it. It should be pretty tasty, and it's quite simple to do actually. Once you've got a decent stock, it's actually it's pretty easy. So I'll just get this pan over here for the minute. We've got our chicken stock here. Now this has got a little layer of fat on it that we're going to just skim that off and pop it in a bowl, and we're going to actually fry our ingredients up using that fat. I've got 4 nice corn cobs here, which should be plenty. I've got an onion, a bit of ginger, 1 clove of garlic, and we're going to use some spring onions, which I bought earlier. So we've got some nice spring onion here as well. So we're going to use that. That will be used a little bit to fry off in the pan, but we're not going to use too much of that because I've got this onion here. So this is mainly just going to be used for a garnish. So I'll actually keep that in the fridge at the minute, because I do have there's one here that we can use that's a bit past its best, but we're only using the bottom part, so it will be fine. And that's kind of it. It's pretty simple, really. I might put a bit of rice vinegar in it as well, because that tends to work quite well. I'll probably just put a bit of sushi vinegar in it, and then that's kind of it. So we'll get that all prepared, and then it should be pretty tasty. Right, first things first, we're going to skim off this fat from the chicken. So I've just got it out of the fridge, and I'm just going to scrape the spoon over the top of this chicken, as you can see, and you just get this really nice, like kind of fatty, I don't know, this is just like kind of really nice concentrated chickeny, olive oily fat kind of mixture, because we obviously cooked the chicken stock with a little bit of olive oil in there. And so if you scrape most of this off, first of all, it keeps the fat out of the stock, which makes it just taste a bit cleaner, and it also gives us a nice bit of fat to fry these onions and things off with, so we'll get a real nice bit of flavour in there. So so you can kind of see, just really, you've got to be really gentle with it. Just drag your spoon over the top, and you've got to do this when it's straight out the fridge, because if this comes up to the temperature, it will start to liquefy a bit and stuff. So that's that. So we've got this nice kind of chicken fat in here, which we'll pop into this pan. I'll probably just dice up the onion first before we turn the heat on. Just put this to one side at the minute. And actually what you can do with this now is, and I'll show you, we'll get this here, we get a nice wooden spoon. Remember, no metal utensils in one of these things because you'll damage it. And then we just literally empty that in. It's like a big kind of blob of jelly. Awesome. Pop that in there and just get the heat on and let that just come up to a real gentle simmer. And that can just do its thing while we prepare all this stuff. And then we'll just add everything into that pan. If we don't have enough stock in here, we'll just use some like kind of powdered vegetable stock or chicken stock to make a bit more liquid if we need to, which is fine to use. I mean, this stuff by Marcel, it's not that bad. It doesn't really contain any real rubbish, so I think it's fine to use that if you need to sometimes. If you haven't got your own stock like this, then it's absolutely fine. And it's a lot cheaper, so you know, don't feel bad for using it. I mean, if you do this stock with the chicken that you're going to throw anyway, this is probably the cheapest thing you can do. But if you don't have enough, then this sort of thing is absolutely fine. So, right, I'm just going to pop this on the heat. A nice gentle simmer. Let this come up to temperature. So that's just on like I'm going to leave that on a medium heat for the minute, and then that'll be fine. So we can get rid of this now. Don't wash that up yet because you might need to fill that up with your vegetable stock and make a bit more stock, but it should be all right. So first off, we're going to get the onion, ginger, garlic prepared, and then we're going to sort out, and I'll show you how to prepare the sweet corn. But this is going to cook down and do its thing for a bit. So I want to slice this in a way that it kind of it strands out into little strands of onion, because even though we're going to whiz a bit of this together, we're going to leave some of it chunky, so we want a few of these strands in there just to give a nice bit of textural difference. Oh, and actually I forgot to say, obviously the other thing you need is the rest of that leftover chicken that we cooked. So that's in the fridge, which we'll get out in a minute, and that's going to go into the main base of the soup when we get to it. If your onion has a bit of dirt on it, you can give it a brush off or a rinse, but it's pretty much fine. So really with this, all I'm going to do is get the thing, slice it like that, take the ends off, and then sew the lines through the onion again this way. We're just going to cut with those lines in nice thin slices, and then these will actually then pull apart into nice little individual, and you kind of see into these like little individual kind of little slices. So so it's perfect. And so we'll just go through and remember what I was saying, don't rush through this if you're not as confident with a knife. So just take your time, you know, make sure you're kind of as consistent as you can be with the thickness. We're probably about 3mm, 4mm thick here. I don't know what that is in inches, you crazy Americans. There we go, so that's nice. Do I want any more than that? I might do half more of this, but not the whole amount. So it's going to be 3/4 of an onion. A little bit more. Yeah, I think that's a nice amount there. Because remember, we don't really want the onion to overpower the flavours in the dish. So that's perfect. What I'll do now, we'll get the heat on this. Sorry about the beeping once again, it's very, very annoying. We'll get this on a medium kind of heat. And then a bit of olive oil. No, wait a minute, we've got this stuff. So this is our mix of this is the fat that came and sat on top of the stock. Let that heat up a little bit. So when you're like pan frying something like this, let the pan heat up first so it becomes a bit too hot to the touch. It's much better to do that than put oil in a cold pan and let the heat come up. You don't really want you don't really want to do that. Always, you know, so always heat your pan up first, put the oil in, and then the oil will heat up super quick because of all the heat that's in the pan, and then you can add your ingredients to it. It's just a much better way to do things. So yeah, that's what I'd recommend you do there. So my stock has started to melt down into a liquid again, which is looking great. So once that comes up to the boil, just turn it way down, just so it's simmering. We don't really want to lose too much liquid from that. So that's probably hot enough. There's our delicious chickeny fat. I might just put all that in because it's all pretty delicious. And then in with our onions. We just want a nice gentle sizzle like that, so nothing too crazy. And you're already getting these awesome kind of chickeny smells from it. So just stir that around. And I'm on a medium heat here. But keep an eye on it because we don't want it to go too above medium, so in terms of the heat. So that's about the right amount of onions. Now they're kind of in there. I'm going to just do a little pinch of salt. Again, Maldon salt is my preference. And then some freshly ground black pepper. I use a really nice organic black pepper that's like super fragrant and strong. And I like to have pre-ground pepper corns that I grind myself because you get much more flavour from it. If you use pre-ground pepper, it loses its flavour over time from the point it gets ground down. It's just not as fresh and nice, so I always prefer to do it myself. So that will just cook down and do its thing. So let that tick away, and then we will chuck in a little bit of garlic. See, this has got a little green thing in the middle of it, which we don't want, so I'm just going to pull that out. This garlic isn't particularly good. It's got no juiciness to it, bear in mind. Something you have to live with in Australia, unfortunately. So I'm just going to smash that on the edge like that. And then just finely slice and dice. Just sort of run the knife through it a few times like this. Again, just be careful to keep your fingers away. Just be sure, if you're going to do it this way, just have your fingers on top of the knife like this. Cut through like that. And again, because we are going to whiz some of this up, but still we're not going to fully whiz it, so I don't want to have unnecessarily nasty big chunks of anything. So put that in there. It's probably a bit hot, so I'm going to just take that down a touch. Let that stir around. So I'll turn that down to a 3. So I want this to just really slowly sweat down. And if you've got a pan that's really spread out, so your ingredients spreads out evenly across it, you've got to generally work to a bit of a lower temperature when they're not all piled up on each other. So if you're in a smaller pan which is deeper, you can kind of, it cooks a bit differently. So you just have to bear that in mind, just like a little thing. Okay, next up is some ginger. I don't want a huge amount, probably about that much. So it's like a thumb-sized piece. You can actually cook it with this skin on it, but it adds a bit more heat, which I don't really want. So I'm just going to trim that off, just really carefully. Just roll it round as you go, hold it nice and securely, and then trim off like that. And then that's perfect. And then we'll just do some, let's get that out of the way. I should have weighed this down. So I'm just going to do slices first. So I can't talk and chop with this knife because it's seriously sharp. I don't want to cut myself. So once you slice it like that, clump it all back up together on top of each other, and then you can kind of then cut it the other way in little lengthways slices. So I've just done that. You see what I'm doing? Yeah. And then just like this, hold it nice and firm, and then you can just do that rocking motion with it. and cut through into nice little sticks. Just super slow and gentle, don't rush and show off with this. Unless you want to and you're confident, but that's how we cut ourselves sometimes. And then I'm just going to dice this, so then just make sure that's all tucked up nice and in a nice pile like that. Hang on, let me just make sure that isn't going too far. It's all good. I'm just going to turn this stock down so that's just literally warmed through that stock, and that's it. It's not even really boiling. So now I'm just cutting back across these sticks to make little dices. And this is probably enough ginger actually, even though I've cut all that. So I'd say half a thumb size of ginger, but it depends how much ginger you like and you want in it, but it is quite a strong flavour, so you don't want to overpower your dish with any one thing really, because remember this is about the chicken and the sweet corn, so they're like the two main flavours we want to come out. So that's good. Go. Perfect. Let's wash the hands. There, that's pretty nice. So let's get our spoon, stir all that in. So this kind of garlic, ginger, onion flavour is a real base for Asian cooking. Chili as well, but we're not going to put any chili in this. And to keep a track of the time, so my egg went in about 10 minutes ago. So I know I have to give that at least 45 minutes at 63 degrees centigrade. That's a minimum really, but it should be done after about that time, but I'll probably give it about an hour. Because once we're done with this and we're simmering it and stuff, we'll be, I don't know, I might put a bit of this in, why not? So just a bit of spring onion, not too much. So I've just halved and then just back across. Because even though it is onion and we've got onion in there, it's a different sort of flavoured onion, so I think it'll be quite nice in this dish. And I've got loads in the fridge, so it's worth using it up. Give that a little stir, and as you can kind of hear, it's a really gentle sizzle. You don't really want it going much more than that. And the onions are just starting to discolour a tiny bit and going a bit translucent and a little bit brown, but very light brown though, so nothing major. So that's looking good. That can just tick away. Spoon. And then we're going to just prepare this sweet corn. Now I'm not going to use this big fancy knife for the sweet corn because the sweet corn's a bit tougher, and even though this probably would make short work of it, I'm going to use another knife which is a little bit sturdier. But again, I need to rinse this knife because I don't want food stuff, especially onion, on it, because it will discolour the blade, because the blade is actually carbon steel, or the part that it cuts with, which you can kind of see just at this point down is carbon steel, which will rust, so you just have to make sure that's completely dry. Pop it back in the drawer. These are some of my other favourite knives, these Takamura knives, which are super sharp as well, but this one's a little bit less sharp and a bit more of a sturdy edge. So we're just going to cut the ends off here. So just be really careful when you go through, just hand on here and just really gentle and down through, and that's great. And then to make this easier to cut, we're going to go through it again in the middle. Once you're in and secure in it like that, hand on top of the blade here, make sure your fingers are away from here, just on the handle, and just down through. So there's those two bits there. I'll just repeat that through all this. You don't need me to see me do that. In the meantime, this is just going to keep cooking down really slowly, and it will just slowly take on some colour and sweeten and, you know, bring out all those delicious flavours of the garlic, the ginger and the onion. And then what we'll do is we'll add the sweet corn into this. But once actually let me show you what we're going to do here, and then I'll do the rest of these. So get your your sweet corn that you've done halved like this, and then we're just going to go down the edge so you can see in the top where the sweet corn and the core separates or begins and ends. So just run the knife really gently down it, and then you get a nice bit of sweet corn off it there, and just keep going through, turning it by, you know, 45 degrees or so, not even, and just keep running down just really carefully. Just follow the line of that core down. You can kind of see where it begins and ends, and that gives you all that beautiful sweet corn there. Same way with this. Now this way is a bit more angled, so you just have to find the start of the sweet corn from the top and then just guide down. You'll know when it's when you're doing it right, because it's easier and harder to cut. So if you go too far in, it becomes harder to cut, and then you know you're pulling off too much of the core. And because this knife's really sharp, it will actually take a load of the core off. So you just have to be a bit careful of what you're doing. But you can kind of see what I'm doing. Just following it down, and then you get your nice corn kernels off. Now you can, if you wanted to, just buy tinned sweet corn, but this stuff's much better and it's fresh, and I just think it's better to use. So as you're going, once you've done each one, we'll get a bowl. And we'll pop that in the bowl and just break those over here so you can see what I'm doing. Just break those apart a bit in the bowl. And then what we'll do is we'll just repeat that process with these remaining three, and we'll get a big bowl of sweet corn, which we'll then add into here in a bit. So we'll be right back and do that stage. Hey guys, right, we're back. So I've gone through the rest of that sweet corn, sliced it all off the cob, and that's given us this much here. So that was 4 cobs. It's probably about right for this sort of quantity that we had, which was, what do we have? We had about 5.5 cups, which is about 1,250 millilitres of stock. And it was, remember, it was 3/4 of an onion, or half a big onion, or 1 slightly smaller onion, just sliced up, a little thumb piece of ginger, 1 clove of garlic, and a little stick of, what's it called? Spring onion, or salad onions, whatever you want to call them. So as you can see, this is cooked down nicely. It's got a really kind of nice, translucently light brown kind of colour to it, which is great. I'm going to turn that back up a tiny bit now, because we're going to pop the sweet corn in. And then this, just kind of, these will break up a bit in the pan as well, but we're just going to add this into the pan. And at this point, we're going to add a little bit of butter as well, because butter and sweet corn is just such a nice combination. Break this up into the pan like that. And you'll notice you get this kind of milky sort of liquid out of this stuff, and that I think actually helps thicken this soup a touch. That's only a bit of bro science because of the whole cornstarch thing, so I don't know if that comes from corn. I assume it does. So I'm assuming it's that sort of property to corn that gives it that kind of thickening ability. So, but that is complete bro science, so who bloody knows. So I'm just going to wipe that down like that. So now I've turned this up a touch. I might go 1 notch more, so that's on 5, which is about half power on this thing. I mean, obviously it's going to range depending on what you're using, but a medium heat is good just to get things going. We want this to cook off a little bit, so stir that all up. Then I'm going to grab some butter and just, I don't know, like a knob of butter like that is probably, yeah, a little bit more, why not? It's probably good. And then I'm going to add a touch more salt now. So what I like to do with salt is I like to season as I go for each ingredient, and that way you know you're not really going to be over seasoning something, because you're seasoning for each ingredient, so you kind of know, you kind of keep track of how much salt goes in. And also if you do that, you actually get a nice balance and depth of flavour through stuff. If you were to salt right at the end, then it's going to actually taste saltier than if you just do a little bits of salt going through it, because that just helps bring out the flavour of each ingredient rather than adding lots of saltiness. So I mean that's how I tend to salt stuff, which works really well for me. So now we're just stirring this all up through and getting that butter stirred through it. Let that melt in there and just let that cook off a bit. You'll know it's starting to cook off because the yellow goes from a slightly paler yellow to a more vibrant, deeper, darker yellow. Yeah, that's really good. So that's doing its thing. Yeah, excellent. So there we go. So now we're going to let that cook down for a few minutes and then we'll go on to our next stage. So let's give that about 5 minutes and then we'll be back to do the next step. Okay, we're back. So now as you can see, you should have seen in that little cut the colour of this go a bit deeper and darker, kind of yellowy colour. So this has had about 5 minutes and I've just been literally stirring it like this, just making sure it doesn't stick, because we've got the temperature up to about a medium heat, so it's oh bloody hell. There we go. So this is about right, and the reason I'm doing this is I want the sweet corn to take on some of these flavours from the ginger, the garlic and the onion for a start, and then also with the butter and the salt and the pepper, it just kind of seasons everything nicely in this pan. You could just chuck everything in the other pan with the stock in it and boil it down and you'll get something that's okay, but this really gives you the depth of flavour in something that and that it takes it from being okay to really, really tasty. So doing stuff like this is super important, and it is a bit more of a faff, but really, I mean, it's not, for me, I like doing this sort of thing. So yeah, so that's perfect like that. So we'll just basically turn that off and that can just chill out. And I'll bring this pan over here actually so you can see what's going on. Let's just pop this on here. That can just chill out there for a sec, and then we're going to bring over our pan. So this is our pan of, better turn this off, I always forget. So we'll just pop this back on again, get this coming up to a simmer. So this is our pan of melted stock that we had from the fridge that was in that jelly form, and it's now this beautiful liquid. So that's just going to come up to temperature. Now, I don't think there's enough stock in there for me to accommodate all that sweet corn and the chicken that I'm going to put in. So I've made up a little extra batch of this kind of vegetable stock, which is from this stock powder, which is absolutely fine. I mean, you're going to have to do things like that sometimes to make up quantities, or you know, maybe for some reason you ruin your stock, or I don't know, you drop it or something. So just don't be afraid to use stocks like that, because sometimes you have to, and if you're on a budget, it's the only thing you're going to be able to use. So it is a really good thing to use, and it can still be super tasty even though you're using like a powdered stock or a pre-made thing. So I'm just going to give that a little stir around. And what I'll do is, once this comes up to temperature, I'll put the sweet corn in first, see how much liquid I need, and then I'll pour in some of this extra liquid so that we're about right, because I might not need all of that in there. So, but it won't hurt even if I do put it all in, because you just get extra soup. And then, you know, this is great for a little starter course for like an Asian themed dinner party, or if you want to take it in for lunches. Or just have it for your, you know, as part of your dinners for the next few days. Once this is made, this will last 3 or 4 days in the fridge, no problems. So that's looking super tasty. And then if you want to try this, you can. The sweet corn should have a little bit of crunch left to it, but it's sweet and when it's cooked, and just all those nice flavours with the garlic and the ginger and the spring onions. So this is starting to steam now, so that's good. So once it's to that point, we're just going to add in our sweet corn. This can go in. Perfect. Just be careful when you're pouring it in because you don't want it to splash on you. And that is great. And actually looking at it, the amount of liquid isn't too bad. Well, I am going to add the chicken in here, so beautiful. And then just put your pan to one side out the way. Now, this is our chicken that we had in the fridge from the other day. So what I want to do is we're going to use up the rest of this, and it will just all come out in a big chunk because it's all kind of solidified with the cold. And there's still some of this chicken stocky thing. If you remember when I made this chicken for my first chicken salad wrap recipe, which we'll put up with the magic of YouTube somewhere, and I actually poured that stock that was in the base of the pan when I roasted the chicken back through into this chicken, and that's what's made this solidify. So there's all this beautiful chicken, concentrated chicken flavour in here. Now I'm just breaking this apart with a spoon, or you can use your fingers or whatever. I just want to kind of break this all down, back out. Now what you could do, because I'm going to whiz this up, you could save a few chunks and have a few nice chunky bits of chicken and just put them to one side. So I'll just pop these in this foil and I'll just find some nice big chunks of chicken, break those up. And this is almost really just more for the odd little chunk through the soup. But I don't have too many because I'm not going to whiz it a lot. I'm just going to literally give it a few blasts. So it's still going to be quite chunky and chickeny. But we'll just have a few extra bigger chunks. And that's good. And the rest can just break that into the soup. And this is steaming and bubbling now. So obviously watch out if it splashes. And then all this kind of jellied kind of stocky stuff in this is going to just like melt through into this soup and give it even more flavour and just deliciousness really. And it will actually bring the level of the soup up a bit because it will go down into liquid form once it heats through. That just goes in. And then also while you're doing this, when you're breaking it apart, just feel for any rogue bones or bits that might have gone into it, but because we were careful when we shredded it initially, it should be fine, but just make doubly sure as you're going through, and that should be fine. So this chicken can just sit here for a bit, just like that, and we'll put that in after we've whizzed it. Just gonna wash my hands. Okay, so there we go. So now we just give this a little stir around. And actually the quantity and liquid is pretty good. I mean, I'm pretty happy with that amount. So, I mean, I've already made this stock now, so I might just add a little, you know, maybe a tablespoon or two of liquid just to loosen things up a touch. When we whiz it, it is going to thicken a touch. That's great. And we're just really now warming this chicken through. I mean, you don't need to cook this for hours. We're just making sure the sweet corn's all fully cooked through, which it pretty much was when we did it initially in the pan and when we were frying it off. Because if you cook it for hours, you're going to lose that. You're going to actually lose flavour because the sweet corn will just lose its all its flavour from it. So I'm probably going to give that 5 or 10 minutes, just really gently simmering, and that's it. I mean, you can add a little splash of this sushi seasoning, which is like vinegar and sugar and a few bits and bobs and mirin. So I'm just going to give a little splash, a little bit of vinegar in there, it gives it a nice Asian-y vibe, and it will just balance a touch of the sweetness that's going to be from all that sweet corn, because it is quite sweet corn. That sounds silly to say it, but it depends where you are. But some sweet corn can be a bit horrible, but we're lucky out in Australia that the sweet corn is so delicious. So my egg's still doing its thing. That can just sit there indefinitely. I've got a bit of parsley left over from the other day, so I'm going to dice a bit of that up as well. But let's give that 10 minutes and then we'll come back and finish it off. Right, we're back. So This has had about 10 minutes, just really gently. You can kind of just see just a little ring in the middle is just bubbling away and the steam coming out. That's about as hard as you want to push it. Give it a try, make sure the sweet corn is tasting nice and sweet corny and that it's fully cooked, which it should be. I think it's tasting good. Also, at this point, check for seasoning. If it tastes a bit bland, that means you need to add a touch of salt. So it's kind of almost salty enough, so I added a bit of pepper and just a little tiny extra pinch of salt, but apart from that, it's really good. So now we're at that point, we're going to just give it a whiz up with one of these like stick blender things. You don't whiz it too crazily because you don't want it to splash anywhere. And literally, we're going to just whiz it a tiny little bit. I don't want it to be completely smooth. I want it to be a little bit whizzed up but still have chunks. So literally just put it in various places. Give it a little whiz like that. And you'll see it starts to like kind of go a bit creamy and thicken. So you can kind of see I'm doing it really carefully. So what's that, about 6 or 7 whizzes? And then just put this to one side a second and then give it a little stir. Can you see what's happened there? It's gone thicker and semi-whizzed up, but you've still got, can you see that? You've still got chunks of whole bits of sweet corn and a few bigger chunks of chicken. And that's probably about right. I mean, I don't really want to go too much further. Maybe a little tiny little bit more. But we want some texture difference in this. And because we've reserved some of this whole chicken, the chicken will whiz up more easily than the sweet corn. That's about right, I think. That's great. So we just undo that, put that to one side, give it a little stir, and then you can see that's about perfect. So a bit mixed up and whizzed up and kind of thick, but still kind of liquidy enough. If at this point it's gone too thick, take some of this extra stock that you made, this little vegetable stock stuff, and just pour a little bit in just to kind of loosen things off a bit. I'll just show you what I mean. So just take this stock, and then we'll just add a little splash more in there and just loosen things off a bit. But I think this is about right in terms of consistency and chunkiness, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, perfect. So that's looking really good. And then what we'll do is, this is the rest of that chicken, and we'll just pop that in. And then what I might also do is cook in a tiny bit of spring onion into it. So now what we're going to do, just literally we're going to slice like rings. So we're just going to take a chunk off of the spring onion like this and just really carefully just cut through in a kind of rocking slicing motion, and just go through the whole spring onion just very carefully. Again, go as quick or as fast as you want, but if you're not too confident with knives, then don't go too quickly. And this is going to give it a nice little kind of oniony zing into it, because this is only going to partially kind of cook through. And I want to reserve a little bit for a garnish, just to make it look all fancy, so we can put that to one side and just pop the rest in there like that. And then I'm going to put, I don't need a whole lot of parsley, just a little sprinkle like that is good. Give that a little stir around. Give it a smell, it's smelling pretty good. And you could put a bit more spring onion in than that, but it doesn't want to be too overpowering, because it's, oh God, splashed it. It just wants a nice little crunchy zing here and there through it, you know. And that's it. I mean, that is where we're at. So we'll get our egg out of the 63-degree water, and we'll get it served up. So we'll be right back. Right, we are back. So I've just popped got the egg out of our 63-degree little bath thing. And what I'm going to do is, I've done that little trick with the hot butter again that I did the other day on my recipe. What was that for? I can't remember. Oh yeah, for my little brekkie wraps. So we're going to do a similar thing. So I'm going to take the egg, just crack it open. Hopefully this has had long enough, which it's looking okay. Again, the whites are a little runny, but the main thing's holding together quite nicely. Probably could have had a little bit longer in there, to be honest with you, but never mind. And then we're going to get our hot butter that I've just melted and just pour that over, which should help to set the edge of that egg that we need. So that's looking good. Let's get a spoon out for that for when we pop it on here. That's just doing its thing, that's great. Just spoon that over the top really gently. And then I just popped in a little bit of pepper in that butter. So that's doing its thing. We want that to be quite soft. So now get your bowl of preference. This is a new bowl I got for Christmas from my parents. So we're going to make use of it with this. So then we're just going to ladle some of this beautiful soup into here. And then, with a bowl like this, you actually don't have to fill it up all the way. You can kind of make it look quite nice by not actually overfilling it. So that's probably about right. Just take a little bit more of the liquid. That's looking good. Let's just fish out a couple of bigger chunks of chicken, just so I can get it looking good for my little pretty picture that I take. It's looking nice. And then if you've got a metal ladle in this thing, just be careful when you're scooping it out, because you shouldn't really use metal in this because it will scratch very easily. So that's our soup. Now, this is the gentle bit. So we're going to just grab the egg out of here, super gentle with it. It's all wobbly and thing. And we're just going to rest that in the top, and it should sit nicely on top, just in the weight of the thing. And then we're just going to get the remainder of the butter. This is all kind of seasoned with pepper, and I'm just going to drizzle a little touch of that over the top of that egg, and that's perfect. Because a little bit of butter like that is never going to hurt. And then I'm just going to get some of this spring onion that we saved for the garnish, and just a little sprinkle around like this, super gentle, a couple of bits on top of the egg, because I'm going to take a photo. I want the egg to be kind of visible, and that's looking really nice. And then I don't know, maybe just a little sprinkle of this parsley that we chopped up as well, just a little smidge like that. And then I've got some of this togarashi Japanese pepper, which I really like, so I'm going to just do a little cool sprinkle of that through it, just to give it a bit on the egg and a little bit around. Gives it a nice little peppery seasoned zing to it. And there we go. There is our delicious chicken and sweet corn soup. So if I hold it a bit closer, you can kind of see there's the egg sitting on top, that when you break into it, all the yolk will all run through, and it will all just then cook through the soup. And that's it, super tasty. If you've got everything prepared, like the chicken and the stock that we did before, it's actually quite a simple recipe, as you saw. It didn't take us too long to do. Like I said, you don't want to cook the soup for too long, because it will just overcook and lose its flavour. And there we go, there's our awesome chicken and sweet corn soup a la Timmy. Give it a go, let me know what you think in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video, tell your friends, give me a share on social media, and hit that subscribe button. That would be really, really awesome. I'm really enjoying this cooking process that I'm getting into here, so hopefully you enjoy it too, and we can kind of go on this journey together. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with our, what have we got tomorrow? Brisket is coming up. I've got a plan for that, so that's going to be the next big recipe, but we might have a few in between that, we'll see. So cheers for tuning in, and we'll be back very soon. Cheers guys.